Welcome everybody to another Rock and More production. This is the second video in our series about geometry. And today we are going to be working with negative numbers on the coordinate grid. You have one objective for this video. By the end, you should be able to use negative numbers in ordered pairs on the coordinate grid. So in the last video, you learned about the coordinate grid. You learned about the origin, which is here at point 0, 0. And you learned that we have an x-axis and that we have a y-axis. The x-axis also being known as a vertical, or excuse me, a horizontal axis, and the y-axis being a vertical axis. And you also learned that we can label these lines on the grid, and we can use those lines to find points on the grid. And I'll just label these up here. So you learned about ordered pairs, like the ordered pair 2, 3. If I were to plot 2, 3, well, this kind of brings up a problem. Do I go up 2 and over 3 to this point? Or do I go over 2 and up 3 to this point? Those are not the same point. Only one of these can be point 2, 3. So I'll erase these and just remind you about this little idea. Are we going to go horizontal or are we going to go vertical first? Well, the way to remember that is to remember me on my ladder. Here's my ladder, and I'm going to use the ladder for washing windows. Well, if I'm going to move the ladder, I need to move the ladder when I'm down here. So I can move the ladder into place, the whole ladder. So I move it horizontally, and then I can move vertically on the ladder and wash the window. If while I'm up there, I try to move horizontally, there are going to be problems. So the point is, I need to move. If I'm going to move, I need to move side to side or horizontally before I move vertically. So we always move horizontally first. So if I go back to the grid then, point 2, 3, I move horizontally first. So I move from the origin over to 2 and up to 3. So this is point 2, 3. So the idea that I want to introduce to you today is that you can also put negative numbers onto this grid, and that's how we end up using these two lines. So this is still the x-axis. Oop, I want to move the grid. This is still the x-axis over here, and this is still the y-axis. So this whole line is the y, this whole line is the x. But when I start moving to the left of the origin, and when I move down from the origin, I'm into using some negative numbers. That's how we label these points. So this line right here, instead of being 1, I'm going to get my grid centered up here again. A little better. There we go. Instead of being 1, we're going to label this line here negative 1. And then this line negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, and so on. And then moving down, I'm going to do the same thing. So this line right here is going to be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. So now we can put some points over into these areas as well. So if I give you the point -5, -1, that means I'm going to go horizontally first. Remember that ladder. I got to move it side to side before I go down or up. So I can go -5 all the way over to -5 and then down to -1. So that would put that point right here. This would be -5, -1. I could also have a point like this, like -3, and then the other coordinate is a positive number, like 7. So I go horizontally first, I move the ladder over to -3, and then my second coordinate is positive, so I'm going to go up to +7. So this right here is -3, 7. That's what we would label that. Could also have one that starts with a positive number and then goes to a negative number, -4, for example. Then I always go side to side. I'm going to go to +6 and then down to -4. This is my -4. So this point is 6, -4. So now you can see we've got a point in every quadrant. We call these different parts quadrants. So that's how you use negative numbers on the coordinate grid. It's just when you go to the left of the origin on the x-axis and when you go down below the origin on the y-axis. Don't forget, if you aren't understanding anything in the video, you can write down questions, or don't be afraid to rewind or pause. You can do all of those things with a video that you can't do with a teacher. So make sure you understand what the video is trying to teach you. Just to go back, you should know now how to use negative numbers on the coordinate grid. See you next time.